Welcome to Behind the Tools. Here's Tradeify CEO and your host, Michael Steckler.
Hi everyone, another episode of Behind the Tools. This week we have a guest in the West Midlands in the UK, Jack Cutler from JRC Electrical. Jack, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. It's great to have you on board. Maybe to start, I think obviously from the company name, you're an electrician, but do you want to maybe start by just give us a bit of background about the company and how you got into the business?
Yeah, so I'm Jack from JRC Electrical. Basically, we're mainly domestic electricians over in the UK. Self-employed, there is me and my brother-in-law currently in the business. He's sort of like an apprentice slash trainee slash he can do everything. So yeah, but mainly domestic. That's what we tend to keep our fingers in.
Cool. And how it's quite commonplace to have someone from the family or a connection in the family. How did that come about?
I'm not sure really. I mean, I started out when I was 19. I think found out that we were having our first child, so obviously had to grow up a bit and crack on. And at the time, I was doing bits for the council over in Birmingham and just needed a pair of hands to help me really. And he was in a job just in a factory sort of thing, and he quite fancied it, so he came over. And 10 years later, he's still with us.
Oh,
can't get rid of him.
That's a decent stint. Yeah, that's great.
Well.
And so well. Talk me 19. I mean, that's young.
Yeah.
And is that what prompted you to get into the trade? How did you get into the trades? What sort of started that journey?
Basically, I don't really know. I wanted to be a tradesman, obviously, but there is quite a few different routes of doing that, and looked at plumbing and electrics just because obviously you're here, they get the most money. So looked at both the courses, and the plumbing had a lot more exams at the time, so I went with electrics.
Oh, is that your reason? Oh, great. Because it's always, people have different reasons. Some people say, they have this perception that plumbing's sort of messier. So they go to the electrician for that reason. And is that still the case on the courses? There's more.
I'm not sure, to be honest. Yeah, it could have been, but at the time I looked into it, and I mean the main one with plumbing and gas and things like that, it's constantly retraining over the same things. You have to constantly do refresh. I know we've got the regulations and that, but that's just short courses, and they're not obviously the end of the world to fund. But with plumbing, they seem to be doing the same sort of thing every 3-5 years. It's just seems to cost a fortune, and obviously it's more and more time off work and in classrooms and things like that. So it just works out easier, obviously, the way we went.
Yeah, and then you did that. You took that path to be the electrician, and then when did you, or what moment did you decide to go it alone?
From the start, really.
Right from the get-go.
Yeah. Well, when I was obviously 19, I was looking for apprenticeships and things like that. And again, at the time, there was literally nothing. It's a bit like now. I don't think there's a lot about it at the moment, but we looked for apprenticeship. I looked, went for a few trials and things like that, and nobody was taking anyone on. So in the end, I just went straight self-employed, funded the college myself, and just subcontracted to various electricians that I knew just to get the experience on site, sort of thing.
That's a great way of doing it. And what was the climate like? You sort of talked about, like right now, obviously economically, UK is not in great shape. I think it's driving some of that. What was the when was this?
From the beginning, we subcontracted to the council for a good 5 years when I first started, and obviously as you go and things like that, you pick up your own customers until it comes to a point where you can just literally go in on your own and get your own business that way. Like,
how did you subcontract? How did you get the council contract?
For a friend, really. I was subcontracting to one other friend of mine, and he had a phone call saying, did he want this work? And basically he said no, but my friend might, which it went from there, really. We started off doing little contracts and went from there up, and then it come to a point where we were just sick of it. It's not the best job to have. And obviously we'd picked up our own customers along the way. So come to a point where we were happy enough to leave it and just take the plunge.
And was that just reputation? You talk about getting other customers. Was that from reputation, or you sort of got your name out there a bit?
Yeah, so a lot of our work is well, I'd say 90% of us is word of mouth. So we'll go to do one job that could then lead to a lot of other things, like, and over time it's just built up and built up and built up to a point where we can obviously do what we want when we want, really, apart from now because it's going back downhill.
Yeah, what was the year that you launched the business?
It would have been 2009.
So it was during the just post the kind of, well, you're right in the middle almost of the global financial crisis. Yeah, that's why it's an interesting comparison to now. Yeah, we can dig into it now. But how do you see things? Obviously, there's been a shift from, I think, sort of ironically, we had this terrible pandemic, which isn't necessarily fully over, but what happened? Because obviously in the trades in that initial sort of year to 2 years, it felt there was a boom from that, with people being at home and getting work done and everything else. And I hear that from globally, we hear that, right, from every country in the world. That seems to be the case. How's it now? What's happening now?
Well, the last 2 years, obviously from the start of the pandemic, we had a bit of time off because I had a child just before the first lockdown. So obviously I was petrified to go out the house. But once we got back, the last 2 years have been ridiculous. It's been the best 2 years we've ever had. And then now, I don't quite know what it is. I think a lot of it is media scaring people not to spend money, and they're panicking about bills, and obviously material prices are going up. But I think that's hit the point now that the material prices have rose that much. They are starting to dip a bit now. The same with fuel and things like that. So I think the rough patch that we've had, it does seem to be picking back up now because people know what money they've got spare. They've lived a bit where the bills are a bit higher. They know what they can spend. So it does seem to be picking up a bit. And I think another factor of it is the last 2 years, people have had that much done. They're sick of people being in their house. They're sick of their house being upside down. They just don't want things doing. But yeah, it does seem to be picking up.
I never even thought about that. It's interesting. Yeah.
Everyone you speak to has had something done. They've just been in the house for 2 years, looking around, thinking, "Oh, I need that doing. I need that doing," and everything seems to be sorted now. They've done it all.
Yeah, and I guess, and also there's the ability now for people to travel as well and spend some of that disposable income.
They'll all go on
holiday, which was
definitely.
Europe was kind of crazy at this time, the amount of travel that's happening. So that has an impact. So interesting. You think it's slightly improving, and do you think that will change how you going into this and seeing that dip in material prices going up? What did you change in your business? How did that affect you?
The only thing we really changed, obviously, with the cost of living, we had to put our prices up. We've been stuck at the same prices for years now, and it comes to a point where you end up going to work and you could be earning more money just doing a regular 9-to-5 job in a shop, something like that. So we've had to put ours up to obviously cope with it. But then we have quoted jobs, say 2-3 months ago. We've quoted a job, we've come to do it, and the material prices are that high. Some of them we've had to take the hit on, but a lot of people understand that. They see it all over the news. They see it everywhere. They see it when they go to the shops for their food. They understand, and they are happy to obviously pay the increased costs. But hopefully, it's on the dip down, and we can settle down a bit.
So how do you review pricing in that? It's one thing we've talked about on here before, about regular sort of review of pricing, because it's probably more extreme than it's ever been, right? It never used to be like this. You'd set prices and the material prices wouldn't change for quite a much longer period of time. How are you coping with that?
We used to have 30 days on the quotes, so obviously they had 30 days to have a think about it and either accept or not accept, sort of thing. But now we're struggling to even keep a week with the way things are going. You quote a job and you can't take the hit yourself. It's not fair, and then you can't overprice something because you can't anticipate what's going to happen, because the prices are that random and going up at different times. You don't know what's coming next. You don't know how much it's going to go up by. So we're quoting jobs and just saying, you've basically got a week, so we can either get the materials or we're going to have to re-quote and give you a different price, whether or not they take that risk of it going down, or because if it goes down, we'll drop ours. We're not going to just keep the money. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And to most people, like historically, what would you say is, if you know what the average time to reply to a quote would be when people do accept the quote? Because you sort of give them 30 days, but surely most people would reply quicker than that.
Normally by the same week, really. Normally.
Yeah.
We tell our own customers when we go and quote a job, we say, look, get 3 quotes and compare us from there. Like a lot of them, if you've used us before or if your family members have used us, they normally just go with it anyway. But I like to just be honest and say, look, get your 3 quotes. You know, we're not going to rip you off, sort of thing. But normally within a week they're back to you and they've accepted.
So it's not a huge behavioural change for the kind of end customer, but it's great advice for the trade. I mean, I worry that there's lots of trades in this period that will go out of business that have, you know, that are thriving from a kind of high level growth perspective. You look at their business and go, you've got plenty of work, but they'll go under because they're sort of, you know, either trying to honour a quote that was, you know, out of date,
you can't do it,
and all those types of things, and you just can't do it. I mean,
it's covering your own back, really. That's all it is. It's just covering your own back, covering your business. At the end of the day, you shouldn't have to pay the increased costs. And the worst bit is
most customers get that, right?
Yeah, they do. But the worst bit is if you put that, you tell them the increased cost, the price has gone up, this is what it is now. Some of them do think that you're just trying it on with them. They think you're trying to rip them off, which again, this is why we say, get a couple of quotes. You know, we're not, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's a difficult time. And then sort of going back to you being self-employed, did you know you wanted to be self-employed, or was that just happenstance because there wasn't you talked about there wasn't the work, but was that an ambition that you pulled forward? Yeah,
I was basically pushed into it, but I think being a tradesman, the end goal of the majority of people is to have your own business and obviously do your own thing, because it just helps so much with everything. If you need to have time off with the kids, if you need to book an holiday, you're not gonna miss these things because you haven't got somebody barking orders at you.
Yeah, of course. And was that the ambition for you in terms of, or the motivation for being your own boss? Was that flexibility and freedom?
Yeah, well, to be honest, when it happened to me, I didn't really have a think about it. I just went straight for it, and that was that. Because only being 19, straight into, you don't really know what you're going to do, really, do you?
Yeah.
So it just
how'd you deal with that? I mean, like 19, it's only now as I've got older, I look back and, you know, that's pretty young. You had a lot of responsibility. You had a, you know, kid and put yourself into running your own business. That must be pretty stressful. How did you cope with that?
At times it was terrible. It's a struggle, and it's a lot of weight on your shoulders, sort of thing, to know that you're not just providing for yourself, you're not just finding work for yourself, you've actually got to find work because you've got no other choice. Like, so that's why we did a lot of subcontracting. At one time, I was probably subcontracting to about 6 or 7 different companies, just bouncing around them and doing bits here and there, sort of thing. So you've got to do it, really. If work drops, if work was to drop off now, I'd go back to subcontracting to different companies. Those options are still there for us, but I'd like to not. But if I had to, I have to. Do you know what I mean? Not much choice.
And is most of your work now sort of driven by word of mouth, repeat customers, and people that sort of know you in the area? Yeah.
Well, I'd say 99% of it is. We don't do a vast amount of advertising. Obviously, we've got Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, things like that, but we don't go out looking for the work, really. But we had a spell a few weeks ago when it went completely quiet and my phone wasn't going off. It didn't ring for 2 or 3 weeks, and I was thinking, oh God, this is bad. But then obviously, it's picking back up now, and we're back on track. So that's good.
When that happens, what do you do? Is there anything you do differently, or anything you sort of stop and think about?
I was starting to think about doing like flyer drops and things like that, getting some flyers printed off, going around all the local area and getting them out there. But I don't want to be that business. I'm not saying that it doesn't work for other businesses, but I don't want to be that business that looks like we've got no work, we're desperate for the work, we need you to ring. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to look like that. So I'd rather sort of tighten my belt a bit, ride the storm, and just hope that it's come all right in the end, and it has done for us this long. So we've got some good customers out there, and obviously they recommended us to their friends, so it's working out really well. Hopefully it carries on.
It's a tricky balance. That's why I asked it. I think it's a tricky balance between, if things do start to slow down in your trade business, do you start, you know, trying to push the growth engine and, you know, do things that, you know, whether it's flyers, knocking on doors, Facebook ads, Google, etc. And I hear your point. There is something about the flyers that come through the door from a customer perspective. I think it can be useful because people might say, "Oh, actually, I need someone right now."
Definitely.
And you've having to put this right at the right time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's good advice for people to think about, I think, because at least if you start planning for it now, in case things do drop off, and they may well have dropped off for some people already, you've got a plan for that.
Definitely.
And then what was the hardest thing for you? And we talked about, you're in your own business even today. What's been the hardest thing about running your own business?
I'm not sure really. I think the thing I struggle, I know I'm saying this now and you're Tradify, but the thing I did struggle with is keeping records of things and invoicing on time and things like that. I just completely forget. I've had customers in the past ring me like 3 months later and say, we still owe you this. And I'm thinking, I'm terrible, absolutely terrible at paperwork and things like that. Horrendous.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you're alone. It's kind of why we exist without talking about Tradify, but that's sort of why we exist. Well, I saw an horrific stat, which wasn't actually about pricing. It was more about what you're describing, which is there's a load of trade businesses that were, on paper, immensely successful, but then were going under because they weren't collecting money fast enough. So they weren't able to pay their suppliers. And this sort of vicious cycle appears. And, not all customers, if you haven't billed them, are as honest as the customer you're referring to, right? Who then do pick the phone up. They just sort of go, oh, great, I've not been billed and I'll keep quiet. Hopefully most people
it works different for I think it works differently for different trades as well. Like with builders and that, you hear all the time, oh, we're booked up for the next year, 2 years. But if you think about being a builder, if they're on an extension or a house build, one job for them is 3-4 months. They only need 4 jobs and the year's full. Whereas we could go out, do 5 jobs in a day. You've then got to remember to do all that paperwork, all the test sheets, all that sort of thing. And it is harder to book the work in 4 months in advance. Like that's another bit of advice to people if they're hearing it all the time saying, oh, we're booked up for the next year. And you do get it in your head and you think, well, why aren't I? But there is a lot of jobs to fill when you're plumber, electrician, painter, all the things like that. You're not going to be filled up for a year unless you're very, very lucky. Then that's fantastic, but you don't hear a lot of it. And when you hear people saying it, you do think like, whoa, what's going on here?
Well, no, and I think you're right. I think it depends on the trade that you're in. We can see that. And I think, certainly, and if I take plumbers as an example, often when people are calling you for a job, it's because there's been an incident, right? And there's been something that's happened, right? The boiler's broken down or whatever. It's not a thing you can plan for. That's ideally, if you're a customer, you're not hoping, you don't want to plan for that, but it happens. So apart from kind of, annual services, those sorts of things you can plan for and try and get booked in and do some smart stuff to make sure that customers have you front of mind to be the person to do that. But generally speaking, that's harder to get done, for sure. And then, it sounds like you've had great success. You're still in business, still thriving. What has been the biggest success for you?
I'm not sure really. Basically just running my own business and being able to provide for my family. I think that's the main thing. The fact that I've done it on my own sort of thing. I mean, I've got my family behind me and they obviously help out where they can. But raising kids and my wife on my own business. That's fantastic.
Cool. Well, that's what it's all about. And then we talked about challenges. I'm quite interested because you have quite a high profile YouTube channel, and obviously on Instagram you mentioned as well. What prompted that? Because it doesn't sound like it was for business growth, I don't think.
No, it wasn't really.
What drove that?
Nick Bundy, basically. I got talking to him, and the things he's achieved from it is just out of this world. And I basically spoke to him and said, I want this. And he said, well, this is what you need to do. So that's what we do. But it's going well for us. Hopefully it grows a bit faster, but it is going really well at the moment. And it's good. Enjoy it.
What drove this thriving social influencer economy in the Midlands, by the way? Would you think it was the effect of people like Bundy that were up there and drove that?
Probably, yeah. And you saw it over lockdown. Obviously, everyone's on their phone, and you see loads and loads of it, and you think, well, I could do that. Let's have a go.
Yeah. And what happened? What was the video that what was the thing that suddenly got you the growth and got all those followers?
I don't know really. I think mine is basically down to Nick. I've done some jobs with him, met up with him, had some chats with him, got on his videos, and it's gone from there really. So it's worked out really well, and I am really grateful for his help. But basically, he's the reason.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic to see. I think it's been really cool to see. Obviously, the profile it brings the industry on one level, but also the support network. I think that
massive.
We've seen from it is really, really cool. People that have never even met each other that can reach out and DM each other and just say, "Hey, I'm struggling with this. Or I've got this idea," and it's not always easy to keep up. Even talking to Nick and talking to Pete over at PB Plumber and those guys, it's not always easy to keep on top of that, right? Alongside the day job, and you've got people send all these messages, but they do endeavor to do that. And I think that's been really cool to see that. And it's quite global as well now. It's not just it's not
the thing that I like about it as well is obviously when you're self-employed, you haven't got that manager sort of supervisor to ring up if you've got a problem or there's something you don't know. And on there, honestly, you put something on and you'll get hundreds of messages helping you out within about 10 minutes, and it is fantastic for that.
Oh wow. Yeah,
it's really good for that. If there's anything you need to know anywhere, there's people on there who are always happy to help, which is really good.
That has been the really positive thing about on the social media side. Certainly see on YouTube is the level of help you can get on those things, and I've definitely seen that. And also the good thing about being self-employed is you haven't got a manager saying, "Why are you doing all those videos? Why are you doing those videos on the job? Can you just get on with the work?"
Get off your phone.
Which would get off your phone, which would definitely happen, especially if they don't understand the impact that can have on the business, which I think is I think it builds trust with customers. There's lots of great things. If I'm looking at a business and they've got a decent
definitely.
Social
it works out well
profile,
for it works out well for a portfolio for your jobs as well. Like we've been to jobs and we can show them pictures off Instagram or videos of installs that we've done, and we'll say, look, this is the mess that we're going to make in your rewire. Have a watch of it and see what you think. And if there's certain lighting that we've done before, we can show that on our pictures and our videos. It is really good for a portfolio, like really good.
Yeah, so even if you're not looking to get a big following, just and we talk about this a lot, even within our company, about photography and the power of photography within Tradify and using that, whether it's on your website or other areas. But I think it's a really great point that if you can video, even every, it's not a big time drain. I mean, it is just picking up your phone and doing a quick video while you're there, or get one of the teams to do it for you if you're lucky enough to have a team supporting you. And I think that's a really great portfolio. And that's where I think it builds trust. I think where I've watched the videos and, someone's made a mistake, but then they've fixed the mistake and they've taken you through the process of, I did this and I've had to then fix it. That's actually quite a powerful tool. I think that builds an immense amount of trust with potential customers. So
definitely.
Really cool.
And they think they know you as well, like because they've watched your work and they've watched your personality, and you basically they do think that they know you straight away, which is really good. But you've automatically got that connection with your customer, which is worth a lot more. You rock up at that door, you could be a random person. If they've watched your videos or watched your reels or whatever, they think they know. Well, they do know a bit of you. They know
do kind of know you. They've seen you in action.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I'd never really thought about that, but that personality piece is important. I think when people want to get someone into their house to do work, and so they've already built the trust just from actually all the work you've already done, taking the videos, and that's a powerful tool. Yeah,
definitely.
It's great advice. And then you must have had some funny stories. There must have been some things that have gone wrong for you. What would be the biggest one?
The biggest one that went wrong was we was in Birmingham on the council, and basically we used to get a job sheet from the council listing off what we needed to do, and the one main thing on there was to tidy up an earth cable that was coming out of the distribution cutout switch. So it was clipped around this little room. They said just tidy it up, put some trunking around it, make it look a bit nicer. So the second we got there, I give the cable a little pull just to pull the clips out. There was a fault inside the cutout, and the whole thing just went just blew up in flames everywhere. It was horrendous. It scared me that much. I nearly enrolled for a painting and decorating course the next day. It was horrific. But they came out and it was a fault with their equipment just before anybody.
You would clarify that.
I have to say that for legal reasons.
You don't have that video of that one. I say of all people, the council as well. Yeah.
That was horrendous. Honestly, it scared me to death. It was bad.
It's a stressful. It's really fun. I think people don't always appreciate when I talk to electricians and plumbers and everyone, even that you're dealing with pretty dangerous stuff sometimes, even builders. I mean, there is a lot of risk if you're not doing things properly. So I do always appreciate that.
If something goes wrong, it normally goes wrong very badly, fast.
Yes. That's a great example. Kind of last couple of questions. I mean, we've talked about some of the things that you've described. Is there one thing you would give advice to a prospective person who maybe like the 19-year-old you watching this video, listening to this podcast, thinking about getting into the trade? What would be the biggest piece of advice you'd give them?
The biggest piece of advice I'd give is just always ask questions. Don't think you know it all. If you need help, ask, because everybody will help you. Well, you'd hope so, but if you need help, basically just ask, because somebody will know the answer.
Believe actually people, I genuinely believe in the trades, from what I've seen across the world, is there isn't the level of, there is competition clearly, but not at that tends to be at the bigger company end. You don't tend to see it. People actually want to help each other out, even in the same local area. It's like, well, there's plenty to go around. Support
Even
each
in
other. So there is
wholesalers,
that support network.
Yeah, you see them in wholesalers. You see all the people who are local to you, and obviously it is competition for you at the end of the day. But there is plenty to go around. You're not going to be able to. We're not going to be able to look after everybody. So there is that, and again, just ask, and everybody's willing to help everybody. That's what I've found anyway. Yeah,
and it's and you're working in small teams, sometimes on your own. So I think having that support network or other people you can talk to is really important as well.
Massively.
Otherwise, the only sort of human connection you get is customers who aren't always going to stand around chatting to you necessarily, telling what they're like.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, I think that's especially not giving you some advice about how to do the job. Yes, that is important. And then last question before we sort of dive into our sort of final few rapid fire questions. Do you see any trends, anything, apart from sort of obvious EV and other things, but are you seeing that? Is there a big shift happening?
I think the massive shift now is solar. Massive.
Yeah.
That seems to be, we've had, I think in the last week, we've probably had 3 or 4 inquiries for it. And it's blowing up. It's going massive, I think. We have, we've done the course, but we're not registered yet to do it. So I have been passing it on to another local company to me. But eventually we're going to have to get into it, because it's just going to be massive. Everybody's seen the rise in energy costs. Everybody wants to save money. And I think that's going to be the main way, battery storage and solar. Yeah.
I totally agree. I was actually amazed seeing the amount of growth in that sector in the UK in the last 6 months. Again,
massive.
driven by those energy prices going up, people suddenly. It's sort of interesting. A lot of the environmental stuff, ultimately, some people do it because of good conscience. Not everyone can afford to have, can afford to do it. To be honest, it's it's not a cheap thing.
No.
But then when you get the double whammy of conscience combined with cost, you definitely see a massive growth in these things. So it'd be interesting to see whether the solar industry can even keep up with the level of demand. Actually, is probably part of
that company who we send to the local company who we've been passing numbers on to, they're saying now that they are struggling to get the materials in. They can't get it fast enough to install it.
Doesn't surprise me. Well, that's the problem with these great big shifts in demand, right? It's hard to predict that would happen, and those energy prices changed very, very quickly. And obviously, no one was predicting a war and all that stuff that came with it. So it's not ideal.
Terrible.
Cool. And then if you weren't, you sort of already answered this. Sounds like you could be a painter, but if you weren't an electrician, which trade would you have picked? Would it have been plumbing?
Yeah, it'd be plumbing, definitely.
And as a spark, what's your tool of choice if you had one, either brand or tool or both?
The best tool I've ever bought is the wall chaser. Class, absolutely class.
Great. And your favorite type of job, if you had one, what would it be?
Second fixing rewires. Nice. Just putting the fancy bits on. Putting the fancy bits on at the end, sat down, having a little mess. Nice. That's the best part.
Great. And then, you finished up on a Friday. You're going to put a tune in the van on. What would it be?
It's going to be "We Are the Champions" by Queen.
Really?
Yeah. Banger. Absolute banger.
You've always loved that tune?
Nah. I watched the film about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
That's the new go-to tune.
That's the new one, is it?
Yeah, the anthem.
Okay, interesting. Last question. You're talking to lots of people. You talked about how you reached out to Nick Bundy and people like that. Anyone else you think we should speak to that would make an interesting guest for the show?
Probably Corey, who's just left Artisan and gone on his own, definitely. Because the things that he seems to be wanting to do looks fantastic, the travelling and that. I think that'd be awesome to speak to him.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we know Corey. Cool. Fantastic.
Get him on.
Jack, I really appreciate you spending the time. This has been great, and congrats on the continued success at Super Brave.
Thank you for having me.
Especially with the newborn. No, you're welcome. Great to speak, and look forward to keeping in touch, and hope the rest of the year, hope things keep improving in the UK. I mean,
excellent.
I really hope that does.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your support as well.
And
appreciate
you're welcome.
It.
Yeah, and we'll speak soon. So thanks everyone. Thanks for listening. Until next time, we'll speak then. Jack, cheers.
Thank you very much.
And that brings us to the end of this episode. Behind the Tools is brought to you by Tradify, job management software for your trade business. If you enjoyed the podcast, let us know by leaving a review, and be sure to tell your mates about it. Email behindthetools@tradifyhq.com if you or someone you know would be keen to join the show as a guest.